The idea began, as many world-shaking ideas do, not in the marble halls of government or the vaulted chambers of the wealthy, but in a place that smelled faintly of solder, ozone, and coffee left too long on a hot plate. Dr. Elias Wren leaned over the table where glass tubing and copper coils bent together in a fragile lattice of experimental ambition. His dark hair hung loose across his forehead, his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted the angle of the coil. Around him, the laboratory hummed, not with the industrial certainty of proven science, but with the nervous pulse of possibility. The theory had been simple enough on paper. The equations had danced with elegance in the quiet of his notebooks. Space was not a uniform fabric, but a layered one. For centuries, humans had dreamed of other worlds, but Elias had found the faintest mathematical hints that other dimensions, not mere planets circling distant suns, rested against our own like pages pressed together in a book. If one could slip between the pages, one might find landscapes untouched, skies unimagined, and civilizations that had never looked upon Earth. It had taken him 15 years to move from theory to the first working prototype. No government had funded him. His work had been dismissed, laughed at, even condemned as pseudoscience. He had pursued it anyway, not for wealth, nor even for recognition, but for the simple, unyielding hunger to know. The prototype sat on the table, a shimmering ring of carbon steel 2 meters in diameter. Arrayed around it were emitters that pulsed with faint blue light. A generator hummed in the corner, hooked by cables as thick as Elias' wrist. "Are you ready?" The question came from Sira, his colleague, his confidant, and the only one who had never abandoned him in all these years. Sira's hands were folded tightly in front of her. She wore no lab coat today, only a simple shirt rolled at the sleeves. Her eyes were fixed on the ring with a mixture of fear and awe. "As ready as I will ever be," Elias said. He pressed a switch. The hum rose in pitch. The coils flared. Air shimmered inside the ring as though a mirage had been trapped in its circumference. The shimmer thickened, deepened, until the air inside the circle was no longer air but a surface, a liquid mirror, trembling between existence and collapse. A gust of wind poured through the laboratory, though every window was shut. The mirror rippled. A sound came, not quite like thunder, not quite like music, but something that seemed to touch the bones as much as the ears. Sira gasped. Elias smiled. The mirror steadied. Beyond it there was a sky, not the blue sky of Earth, but something darker, tinted with hues of violet and green. He glimpsed, for a heartbeat, a jagged horizon and stars hanging far too close. "It works," Sira whispered. "It works," Elias said, his voice cracking with triumph. "My God, it works." The portal to another dimension had opened. The first days after the experiment were feverish. Elias and Sira kept the discovery quiet. They told no one. Their equipment was fragile, the mathematics imperfect. To share it too soon would mean ridicule again, or worse, theft. Instead, they tested. They threw sensors through the shimmering gate. Most returned. The air pressure on the other side was slightly higher than Earth's. The gravity was a little weaker. The atmosphere was breathable, though laced with unfamiliar trace elements. Days later, Elias tied a rope around his waist and stepped through himself. The moment he crossed, his skin tingled as though every atom in his body had been plucked and reassembled. He staggered forward onto dark soil that glittered with mineral flecks. The horizon was serrated with mountains of black stone. Above him, the sky swirled with colors that no earthly spectrum contained, bands of shifting emerald fire, threads of crimson haze. The stars were vast and cold, suspended as if closer than they ought to be. Elias fell to his knees, laughing and weeping all at once. He was the first human to stand in another dimension. Sira followed, her breath catching as she emerged beside him. They stood together, two tiny figures on the shore of a new cosmos. For weeks, they made excursions, each longer than the last. They carried cameras, soil samplers, and scanners. They found rivers that shone with phosphorescent algae, forests of crystalline growths that rang like chimes in the wind, plains of grass that shimmered silver under starlight. It was a place of wonder, dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. Then one day, they were no longer alone. It began with footprints. Elias spotted them in the glittering soil along a riverbank. Three-toed, broad, pressed deep into the ground, too deep for any earth animal, too deliberate to be a trick of erosion. Sierra crouched beside them, her face pale. "We are not the first here," she murmured. The next day they heard voices, not human voices, but something like the clash of metal mixed with the hiss of steam. The sounds echoed through the crystalline forest. Elias and Sierra froze, hiding among the tall chiming spires. Shapes moved in the distance. They were tall, over 3 meters, slender but armored, with limbs too long for human proportion. Their bodies shimmered with a metallic sheen, as if clad in liquid armor that shifted with each motion. Their heads were angular, crowned with protrusions like blades. In their hands they carried weapons that glowed faintly with the same color as the portal itself. Elias' heart pounded. These were not animals. These were not primitive beings. These were people, aliens, intelligent and advanced. The beings moved in formation, scanning the ground with sweeping beams of light. One bent, touched the soil, then straightened and gave a sharp, mechanical cry. The group turned as one, and for a moment Elias felt the weight of their gaze sweep toward where he and Sierra crouched. Sierra clutched his arm. Neither of them breathed. The beings lingered, then moved on. Their voices faded into the distance. When at last Elias dared to move, he whispered, "They know we are here." Sierra's reply was a whisper of fear. "And what if they do not want us here?" They returned to Earth shaken. For days they argued. "We cannot reveal this yet," Sierra insisted. "Not until we understand them. We could bring destruction down on ourselves." Elias agreed in part, but another voice gnawed at him. To hide discovery was to betray it. Humanity deserved to know. More importantly, humanity deserved to prepare. "They are advanced," Elias said one night as they sat in the lab, staring at the quiet ring. "Far advanced. Their weapons alone prove that, if they see us as intruders, we cannot face them alone. Humanity must be warned." Sierra shook her head. "And if humanity sees only conquest, if we rush through with soldiers and machines, declaring ownership of a world that is not ours, they will have no choice but to fight us. We could provoke war where none need exist." Her words weighed heavily on Elias, yet the memory of those metallic figures haunted him. The precision in their movements, the unity. The technology that seemed to hum with power beyond anything Earth had built. "If war is inevitable," Elias said softly, "better we are ready for it." The decision came weeks later when the beings came to Earth. The laboratory shook as alarms screamed. The portal flared without warning, as though pulled open from the other side. Elias and Sierra rushed into the chamber, shielding their eyes from the brilliant light. Figures emerged, tall, armored, blades protruding from their heads like living weapons. Their eyes glowed with cold fire. Their voices clashed like steel as they barked commands Elias could not understand. The first one leveled its weapon at Elias. Sierra screamed. Instinct overrode reason. Elias hurled the nearest object, a metal wrench, at the alien's chest. The blow rang harmlessly against its armor, but the distraction was enough. Sierra slammed the emergency cutoff. The portal shrieked as energy collapsed. Half the alien squad was cut in two, their bodies shearing apart as the gate closed on them. The survivors shrieked with fury and vanished back into their dimension before the gate winked shut entirely. Smoke filled the laboratory. Elias coughed, heart pounding, ears ringing. He looked at Sierra, who stood trembling by the control panel. "They came here," she whispered, "through to us. They did not come in peace," Elias said grimly. And so humanity learned that the other side of the portal was not only wondrous, but hostile. News spread like fire once Elias and Sierra revealed what had happened. Governments seized the laboratory, tore apart the equipment, and rebuilt it in fortified facilities. The portal was no longer a dream, it was a threat, and a weapon, and a frontier. Humanity argued. Some cried for exploration, others for conquest, others still for closure of the portal forever. But in the shadows of those debates, soldiers began to train, Scientists began to study, and politicians began to prepare speeches of war cloaked in the language of defense. Elias watched it all with a strange detachment. He had wanted discovery. He had found it. But discovery had teeth, and humanity had no choice now but to bear its own. The portal was not closed. It could not be. Once opened, it was forever a door. And beyond that door, the alien beings waited, their voices like steel, their weapons like light, their eyes burning with the certainty that humanity was an intruder that must be erased. But humanity was no easy prey. The first war council in human history to include the word interdimensional did not occur in a palace or a marble forum. It happened in an underground facility built into the stone of an abandoned mine. Concrete walls sweated moisture. The air was stale with recycled ventilation. Yet here, far from public eyes, the governments of Earth gathered in secret to decide how humanity would respond to the arrival of enemies from another dimension. Dr. Elias Wren and Sira were seated at the end of a long table lined with uniforms and suits. Flags of nations hung behind the assembled leaders, their colors muted in the dim light. Generals with lined faces and medals on their chests whispered to one another. Scientists scribbled notes. The silence was heavy until the eldest of the generals, a man with snow-white hair and a voice like gravel, spoke. "You claim the invaders came through your portal. You claim they struck first. We have lost men securing your laboratory. Why should we not weld that machine shut and bury this nightmare before it grows?" Elias held the general's gaze. His hands were folded tightly on the table, though they trembled faintly. "Because the nightmare will not vanish if we close our eyes. They came here once. They can do so again. You saw their weapons. You saw their discipline. If they choose to make war on us, ignorance will not save us." "Preparation might." Murmurs ran down the table. A woman in a silver suit, her hair pulled into a precise knot, leaned forward. She represented one of the great industrial alliances. "Preparation," she said, "is not cheap, nor simple. You are asking the world to divert resources, to risk panic, to put weapons into the hands of nations that already distrust one another. Why should we gamble on a threat that may never return?" Sierra's voice rang across the table before Elias could answer. "Because I stood in that laboratory when they arrived. They did not come in peace. They did not speak. They did not gesture. They did not ask. They aimed their weapons at us the moment they crossed the threshold. That is not an accident. That is intent." Silence followed. The woman's lips pressed thin, but she said nothing more. Another general spoke, younger and sharp-eyed. "If they come again, we must meet them with force. If they have ships, we build fleets. If they have weapons, we design better ones. If they live on the other side of that portal, then by the gods we carry the fight to them before they carry it to us." A ripple of approval moved through the military delegation. Others looked uneasy. Elias drew a long breath. He had feared this. He had known the hunger for battle would awaken in many the moment a threat presented itself. And yet, he could not entirely disagree. "The danger," Elias said carefully, "is assuming they can be met as we would meet one another. We do not know their numbers. We do not know their full capabilities. To rush blindly would be to invite disaster." The eldest general grunted. "And to wait is to invite invasion. You say they came once. They will come again. The only question is whether we are ready when they do." And so the council ended as such meetings often do, not with a single voice, but with a compromise that left every faction uneasy. The portal would remain under guard. Teams of soldiers would be trained specifically to pass through it. Scientists would be given funding to study alien samples and technology. And somewhere beneath the spoken words, the decision had been made. Humanity would prepare for war. The training began immediately. In deserts, forests, and mountains, special units drilled until their muscles bled and their nerves frayed. They fought not against an enemy they knew, but against simulations built from the fragments Elias and Sira had recorded. Towers of steel were constructed to mimic the alien height. Soldiers fought under skies painted violet and green with artificial light, learning to orient themselves in unfamiliar horizons. Weapons were redesigned. Engineers studied the energy bursts from the alien rifles, their power that sliced through steel. Human scientists could not yet duplicate the technology, but they could adapt. Shields were built, layers of magnetic fields designed to absorb or deflect. Armor was reinforced with carbon composites stronger than anything worn in Earth's past wars. Elias found himself traveling from base to base, called upon as a reluctant prophet. He explained what he had seen. He described the way the alien voices grated like clashing steel, the way their limbs moved too smoothly, too united. He drew sketches of their weapons, their armor, the cruel angles of their heads. At night, he returned to his quarters and stared at the ceiling, wondering whether he had doomed his species by ever turning on that machine. Sierra, too, was changed. Once she had been cautious, the voice urging restraint, but since the invasion, something colder had taken root in her. She worked long hours in the laboratories, her face hard with purpose. "They chose war," she said once when Elias questioned her. "We did not, but if they bring war, we must end it, not endure it." Her eyes did not waver as she spoke, and Elias knew she had hardened her heart against doubt. The aliens did not wait long to return. It was 6 months after the first incursion. The portal, kept under constant guard, flared without warning. Alarms screamed. Soldiers rushed into position. This time, humanity was ready. The alien squad emerged in formation, weapons raised. But before they could fire, a wall of human energy shields blazed to life. Alien bolts slammed against the barrier and dissipated in showers of light. Human rifles answered, cracking thunder that echoed through the underground chamber. Bullets sparked against alien armor, some glancing off, others piercing with sickening wetness. The battle was brutal, short, and decisive. A dozen aliens fell. 2 soldiers were lost. When the smoke cleared, Elias stood among the bodies, staring down at the still form of one of the invaders. Its armor was cracked, its head twisted at an angle. For the first time, Elias looked closely at the face beneath the helm. It was not a machine, though it gleamed like one. Flesh lay beneath the metallic sheen, gray and smooth. Its eyes were multifaceted, like those of an insect, but deeper, burning with the faint glow of bioluminescence. Its mouth was a thin slit ringed with small, sharp teeth. A creature alien yet undeniably alive. "They are mortal," one of the generals said, nudging the corpse with his boot. His voice was grim but satisfied. "And mortals can be killed." Sierra said nothing, but her gaze was locked on the alien body, her jaw tight. The war escalated. The aliens struck again, larger forces each time. They poured through the portal in disciplined waves, their weapons scorching earth and steel alike. Humanity met them with fire and steel, with bombs and shields, with the unyielding determination that had carried the species through every previous trial. At first, every battle was defense. Every fight was fought on Earth's side of the portal. Cities trembled. Civilians were evacuated. Rumors spread like disease, tales of alien armies massing, of worlds beyond filled with endless legions. But then came the day humanity struck back. It was a joint decision of generals and politicians, though Elias' protests filled the halls. A battalion was chosen, armed with the newest shields and weapons, trained in the alien landscapes. They would cross the portal, not as explorers, but as soldiers. They would bring the fight to the enemy. Sierra came to Elias before the operation. Her face was pale in the half-light of the underground chamber. "They will go with or without us," she said, "but if we do not witness, if we do not guide them, they may make mistakes that cannot be undone." Elias wanted to refuse. He wanted to walk away, to let others carry the burden he had unleashed, but he could not. His responsibility chained him as surely as iron. "I will go," he said softly, and so, on the day the battalion marched through the shimmering gate, Elias and Sierra marched with them. Crossing was no easier the second time. The tingling sensation of being torn apart and reassembled left Elias reeling, his stomach heaving. He staggered onto alien soil, the sky above a swirl of emerald and crimson fire. Soldiers fanned out around him, rifles raised, shields glowing. They had stepped into a wide plain beneath jagged mountains. The soil glittered darkly, reflecting the strange sky. Wind howled across the emptiness. For a moment there was silence. Then came the first scream of alien horns. Shapes rose over the ridge, dozens, then hundreds. Alien warriors, armored and armed, their weapons blazing with light. They charged as one, their voices a clash of metal, their movements perfectly unified. The human battalion held, shields locked, rifles roared, the air filled with fire and blood. Elias crouched behind a rock, clutching his pack of instruments, forcing himself to watch, to record, to witness. Sira knelt beside him, her jaw clenched, her hands trembling only slightly as she took readings of the strange energy fields. It was chaos and slaughter. Men fell screaming. Aliens were torn apart by grenades. The soil glittered with spilled blood, red mingling with dark alien ichor. The sky itself seemed to shudder with the violence below, and when at last the ridge lay silent and the battalion still stood, Elias knew the truth. Humanity had stepped not into discovery nor diplomacy, but into a war of survival. And the aliens had made a grave mistake. They had thought humanity soft. They had thought Earth divided, fragile prey. They had never seen what humans became when united against extinction. The campaign on the alien plane became the spark that lit a fire across Earth. For the first time in human history, the nations of the world united not under treaties of convenience, but under the shadow of survival. News of the battalion's stand spread despite the secrecy of governments. Soldiers returned with scars and stories that burned through the filters of censorship. Images of alien corpses, their metallic flesh split open under human fire, found their way to every corner of the globe. For once, humanity did not look upon the sky with wonder, but with resolve. Factories thundered day and night. Satellites were reprogrammed to scan beyond their intended horizons. New divisions of engineers and scientists were conscripted, not to design comforts or luxuries, but to forge weapons and armor for an enemy that had already bled Earth. Dr. Elias Wren became both herald and prisoner of his own creation. Wherever he went, soldiers saluted him with respect tinged with suspicion. Civilians cursed his name in hushed voices, blaming him for the war, even as they clung to his discoveries for hope. Sira walked beside him, her face always stern, her eyes always scanning for danger. "You wanted to explore," she said one night as they rode in a convoy toward yet another fortified portal site. "Now you are exploring what happens when discovery cuts." Elias did not reply. He could not. His throat ached with unshed words. The portal stood now inside a fortress of steel and concrete, a wound in reality guarded by towers and guns. Crossing it had become routine for some. Soldiers marched through by the hundreds, returning with trophies or not returning at all. Scientists crossed in smaller numbers, mapping the alien geography, cataloging the strange flora and fauna, and collecting samples of the enemy's weapons. But the deeper the incursions went, the clearer it became that the aliens were not scattered tribes or lone outposts. They were an empire. Scouts reported vast fortresses of black stone and gleaming crystal, cities that pulsed with light like beating hearts. Roads carved across the alien plains glowed faintly, feeding energy into structures that stretched toward the violet heavens. Armies marched in formations so precise they seemed choreographed. Each alien soldier moved as if guided by a single will, their unity eerie, unnatural. Worse still, whispers spread among the human troops. They spoke of the aliens singing, not songs of joy, but chants that rattled the bones, harmonies that bent the air and filled soldiers with dread. The chants were not mere sound. They disrupted instruments, scrambled sensors, made rifles jam and shields flicker. It was as if their very voices were weapons. Elias recorded every detail, even as the weight of it hollowed his chest. Humanity had thought itself clever for holding the line, but they had only tasted the edge of the storm. The first counter-assault came at dawn. It was not Earth that was attacked, but the human base established just beyond the porthole. For weeks, soldiers had fortified it, digging trenches, erecting walls of steel and stone. They called it Outpost Dawn, a fragile human claim carved into alien soil. The attack began with silence, then came the ground tremors, low and steady, like the footsteps of giants. Elias was there that morning, watching the alien horizon through reinforced glass. He saw the dust first, a wall of it rising into the air. Then came the enemy, hundreds, then thousands. An ocean of metallic figures, their weapons glowing, their banners gleaming with symbols no human could read. They marched in perfect rhythm, every step shaking the ground. Their chants rolled like thunder, war songs that made the walls of the outpost vibrate. The first volleys of human artillery lit the horizon with fire. Explosions tore holes in the alien lines. Bodies scattered. But the army did not falter. They advanced steady, unstoppable. Elias ran to the command post where generals barked orders. Screens flickered with chaotic images, aliens breaching trenches, soldiers falling, shields straining under the assault. "We are outnumbered," one officer shouted. "We cannot hold. We will hold," the commanding general snapped. His eyes blazed with the iron certainty of a man who had burned away doubt. There is no retreat, not one step back. The battle raged for hours. Human rifles cracked until barrels glowed. Grenades turned trenches into infernos. Alien weapons lanced through steel, turning soldiers into shadows on the walls. Elias and Sira worked among the wounded, carrying supplies, dragging men from collapsed bunkers. The screams of the dying filled the air, mingling with the alien chants that grew louder, closer, as if savoring the despair of their prey. By midday, the outpost walls were cracked, smoking. The aliens surged against them like waves against a cliff. For every alien that fell, another stepped over its corpse. Then the turning point came. A squad of human soldiers, trapped on the outer wall, fought until their ammunition ran dry. Rather than retreat, they mounted the parapets, bayonets fixed, and charged straight into the alien mass. Their defiance shocked the aliens for the first time. The chant faltered. The tide slowed. And in that heartbeat of hesitation, human artillery roared again, blasting the front ranks apart. The soldiers' charge became legend that day. Outpost Dawn held, barely. When the smoke cleared, thousands lay dead. The soil was black with ash and blood. The walls leaned, the trenches overflowed with bodies. But the outpost still stood, and the portal was still in human hands. Elias walked the battlefield in silence, his boots crunching over shards of alien armor. He knelt beside one corpse, its mouth open as if still chanting. He touched its armor, felt the strange warmth that lingered even in death. "They thought we would break," Sira said behind him. Her face was streaked with soot, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "They thought we would shatter under weight. They do not understand what it means to be human." Elias rose slowly, the smoke stinging his lungs. "They will understand, but only when it is too late." Weeks turned into months. Battles raged constantly across the alien plains. Some were victories, others costly stalemates. Humanity learned quickly, adapting with a speed that startled even its own leaders. Soldiers who survived a single battle often became veterans, their eyes hard, their movements sharp. Tactics evolved, flanking maneuvers, ambushes in crystalline forests, sabotage of alien supply lines. The aliens adapted too. Their chants grew more complex, their weapons more varied. They unleashed machines of war, towering constructs that strode on multiple legs, hurling beams of energy that melted steel like wax. Humanity answered with tanks bristling with railguns, drones swarming the skies, missiles guided by algorithms designed to counter alien frequencies. It was a war of escalation, each side pushing the other to greater heights of destruction. Through it all, Elias and Sira endured. They became fixtures at the front, not as soldiers, but as witnesses and advisors. Elias' notebooks overflowed with sketches and observations. Sira's instruments recorded every frequency, every fluctuation of alien energy. Together, they tried to turn chaos into knowledge, knowledge into survival. But at night, when the guns fell silent, Elias dreamed of the first time he had seen the portal shimmer open, of the wonder he had felt, of the laughter and tears that had filled his chest. That wonder was gone now, buried under ash and blood. He wondered if it would ever return. The first true victory came at the Valley of Shards. It was a place where the alien crystal forests grew thick, their spires taller than buildings, ringing endlessly in the wind. An alien garrison held the valley, their fortifications built into the natural crystal. For months, they had harassed human supply lines, striking without warning, vanishing into the glittering maze. At last, humanity struck back. 3 battalions marched into the valley, their armor painted with dust to blend against the alien hues. Elias and Sira moved with them, though every step made Elias' chest ache with dread. The battle that followed was less a clash of armies and more a dance of ghosts. Soldiers moved silently among the spires, rifles muffled, boots wrapped to soften their steps. Aliens chanted in low tones, trying to disrupt human instruments, but the soldiers advanced undeterred. Then, at a signal, the valley erupted with fire. Grenades shattered spires into shards that rained down like knives. Rifles cracked. Drones darted through the air, firing bursts of searing light. The alien garrison reeled, their unity faltering for the first time. By nightfall, the valley was human. The alien corpses lay among their shattered spires, their chants silenced. When news reached Earth, celebrations erupted. For the first time, humanity had not merely survived an assault, but taken ground, seized it, held it. The Valley of Shards became a symbol, proof that the enemy was not invincible. Elias stood in the ruined valley, the wind carrying faint chimes from the shattered crystals. He felt no joy, only a cold certainty settled in his bones. The war was far from over, but humanity had crossed the threshold from defense to conquest, and the aliens, for all their unity and power, had made the fatal mistake of believing humanity would ever be content with mere survival. The Valley of Shards changed everything. Until that victory, the war had been a desperate defense. Humanity had fought to keep the portal contained, to keep Earth from being overrun, to prove survival was possible. But when the valley fell, when human banners stood where alien chants once echoed, the war became something else. For the first time in known history, humanity was no longer defending against extinction. It was advancing. Factories across Earth roared louder than ever. Weapons flowed through assembly lines at a pace that bent economies toward a singular purpose. Where once nations had argued over borders and resources, now they funneled everything into the war. Yet the war did not remain a matter of soldiers and scientists. It seeped into the marrow of civilian life. Cities held nightly blackouts, fearing alien reprisal strikes that never came. Children played games of portal defense in schoolyards. Songs were written, crude but fierce, about human victories on alien soil. Elias felt it all like a weight pressing down upon him. Each headline that celebrated conquest carved guilt deeper into his chest. Each soldier that saluted him reminded him of lives risked on soil he had first stepped upon in wonder. But the tide could not be stopped. Humanity had found its cause. The campaign stretched outward from the Valley of Shards like ripples from a stone cast in water. Recon teams mapped new terrain, mountain ranges shaped like serrated knives, deserts of black glass that cut boots to ribbons, oceans that glowed faintly in the dark as if alive with currents of fire. Wherever humans went, they found alien resistance. Outposts hidden in caves, patrols moving with their unnatural unity, machines the size of towers that crawled across the landscape, leaving furrows of destruction. Each battle taught new lessons. At the Battle of Black Glass, alien machines turned the very desert into a weapon, shards of molten glass hurled like rain. Human engineers responded by creating armor lined with adaptive cooling systems, capable of withstanding the searing heat. At the siege of the serrated mountains, alien chants collapsed tunnels and disoriented troops. In answer, human soldiers learned to march under silence, communicating only through hand signals and flickering lights. It was a brutal education, but one humanity absorbed with terrifying speed. Elias found himself moving farther from Earth with each passing month, pulled deeper into the alien dimension as humanity carved its foothold. At first, he resisted. He longed to return home, to bury himself in books and silence, but Sira would not allow it. "You cannot retreat now," she said as they stood together in a command tent before a map glowing with alien topography. "Every step we take, every discovery we make, is built upon your work. You are part of this, whether you wish to be or not." Her eyes burned with a fire Elias had never seen in her before. She had once been the cautious one, the voice of restraint. Now she was relentless, her mind sharpened by months of war. "You have changed," Elias whispered. "We have all changed," she replied. The alien empire did not sit idle. From the depths of their cities, they unleashed new weapons. Airborne constructs shaped like blades scythed through the skies, cutting apart drones and bombers alike. Ground troops carried heavier rifles that spat energy capable of ripping through even the newest human shields. Most terrifying of all were the choristers, warriors who did not carry weapons, but instead sang in piercing harmonies that cracked steel, ruptured eardrums, and sent men into seizures. Entire battalions fell to the choristers before countermeasures were devised. Soldiers began to wear helmets lined with layers of sound-dampening foam and electronic filters. Engineers created sonic disruptors to scramble alien harmonies. But the memory of those first attacks lingered, filling men with dread whenever faint echoes drifted on the wind. Elias studied the phenomenon obsessively. He recorded the alien chants, charted their frequencies, built models of their effects on both machinery and human biology. "They are not merely singing," he told Sira one night, his face pale in the glow of data screens. "It is as if their voices carry energy itself, a resonance tuned to the fabric of matter. They weaponize harmony." Sira's expression hardened. "Then we must find a way to turn their song against them." Her words chilled Elias, for in them he heard not only determination, but a hunger that bordered on vengeance. The next great turning point came not from battle, but from discovery. Scouts captured an alien officer alive, a rare feat, for most aliens fought to the death rather than be taken. The officer was bound in chains, its armor stripped, its multifaceted eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the human camp. Elias was summoned to interrogate. The alien sat motionless, its breathing shallow but steady. When Elias entered, it turned its head with unnerving precision, as if it had known he would arrive. "You understand me?" Elias asked, though he doubted. The alien's mandible-like mouth opened. The voice that emerged was rough, metallic, distorted. "We understand." Elias froze. He had not expected comprehension. "Who are you? Why do you attack us?" The alien's multifaceted eyes glowed brighter. "You intrude. You tear open the veil. This realm is not yours. You are corruption." Elias's heart hammered. "We sought only knowledge. You struck first." The alien's head tilted, a gesture both alien and disturbingly human. "Knowledge is corruption. Knowledge spreads until all is devoured. Better to cut rot before it grows." Sira, who had stood silently until then, stepped forward. Her voice was sharp. "And you thought we would submit, that we would kneel to your judgment?" The alien did not flinch. "You will break, all break." The interrogation yielded little more. The alien spoke in fragments, its voice carrying strange resonance that made recording devices crackle. But its meaning was clear. They did not see themselves as conquerors, but as wardens, guardians against corruption that spread across dimensions. To them, humanity was a disease. The revelation hardened humanity's resolve. If the aliens believed destruction was mercy, then no peace was possible. Every soldier, every civilian understood it now. This war could end only with one side destroyed. Campaigns grew bolder. Outposts became strongholds. Strongholds became cities. Human banners spread across alien soil, each victory fueling the fire of inevitability. And yet Elias could not silence the unease that gnawed at him. "What if they are right?" he asked Sira one night as they stood on a ridge overlooking the glowing ocean. The water pulsed faintly, as if alive with veins of fire. Right, she echoed, incredulous. What if knowledge is corruption? What if crossing the veil spreads something that cannot be contained? We opened the door. We walked through without knowing what would follow. Sierra's eyes burned in the strange starlight. Then it is too late to close it. We are here now. We fight. We survive. That is what matters. Elias looked out at the pulsing ocean and felt, for the first time, not wonder, not fear, but dread that stretched beyond war itself. The war reached its most brutal chapter at the siege of the Black Citadel. It rose on the horizon like a nightmare, towers of obsidian stone, walls that shimmered with energy fields, spires that pierced the sky. From within its depths came endless waves of alien soldiers, their chants rolling like thunder. The citadel was not merely a fortress. It was a symbol, a heart of alien power. To take it would mean crippling the enemy. The siege lasted 3 months. Artillery pounded the walls day and night. Drones darkened the skies. Trenches filled with blood and ash. Choristers sang from the ramparts, collapsing bunkers, splitting helmets, driving men to madness. Humanity answered with silence, marching without sound, fighting with grim determination, disrupting alien chants with weapons that screamed in frequencies tuned to their harmonies. Elias walked the shattered fields daily, recording, observing, bearing witness. He saw men turn into legends, charging into fire with no hope of return. He saw women drag wounded comrades through rivers of blood, refusing to yield. He saw the citadel's walls crack, inch by inch, under the relentless pressure of human will. And finally, after 90 days of slaughter, the walls fell. Soldiers poured into the citadel, rifles blazing. Corridors became killing grounds. Chambers became tombs. The aliens fought to the last, their unity unbroken even in death. When the smoke cleared, the citadel stood silent. Its towers were shattered, its spires broken, and atop the highest ruin, a human flag was planted. Cheers erupted across Earth. The Black Citadel had fallen. Humanity had not only survived, it had broken the heart of the alien empire. But Elias stood among the ruins and felt no triumph. For deep within the citadel, in a chamber lined with strange glyphs, he found something that chilled him more than any battle. It was a map, not of the alien dimension alone, but of many, countless layers of reality pressed together like pages in a book. Pathways between them marked with symbols, some glowed bright, others were crossed out, darkened, erased. He traced the marks with trembling fingers. The aliens had not been guarding only their world. They had been fighting wars across countless dimensions, closing pathways, erasing entire realms. And now humanity had torn open a new path. Elias staggered back, his breath shallow. He understood now why the aliens called knowledge corruption, because knowledge spread, because humanity was not the first, and because, somewhere beyond, others might already be watching. The fall of the Black Citadel marked the height of human triumph. Celebrations thundered across Earth. Cities lit up with banners and fireworks. Newsfeeds repeated the same words over and over: unbreakable, victorious. Ascendant politicians declared a new era. Soldiers were hailed as saviors. Even children spoke of future conquests as though they were inevitable. But in the silence of the shattered citadel, Elias could not forget the map. The symbols burned into his memory, dimensions upon dimensions, some still glowing, others erased. The alien empire had not been fighting to dominate. It had been fighting to contain. Humanity had broken their line of defense, and once a breach existed, it could not be unmade. Weeks after the siege, Elias found himself summoned to a chamber beneath the ruins of the citadel. Sierra stood waiting, flanked by soldiers, her face pale with exhaustion yet alive with fierce purpose. "You have seen what lies beyond," she said, no preamble. "The map." Elias nodded, his throat tight. "Then you know," she continued, "that this war is not ending. We have won a battle, perhaps even a campaign, but the war stretches across dimensions. If we do not move forward, others will. Others already have." Her words struck him like blows. "You mean to spread, to march into other dimensions as we marched into this one?" "We have no choice," Sierra said. Her eyes gleamed with conviction. "The aliens saw us as a disease because they feared what knowledge could do. But we are not a disease, we are the cure. If others exist beyond, if others would rise against us, then we must be ready to face them. Elias's voice broke. Do you not see? This is how it begins. This is how corruption spreads. They were not wrong to fear us. Sierra stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Perhaps they were not wrong, but fear cannot bind us. If we stop now, we die later. If we move forward, we may live. Her words were iron. Elias felt the ground tilt beneath him. Humanity did not rest. Factories produced weapons in numbers that dwarfed even the bloodiest years of Earth's history. Research spiraled into new realms, dimensional physics, resonant harmonics, adaptive biology. Soldiers were trained not merely for war, but for war across worlds. The portal that had once been a single gateway became a nexus. Engineers carved new routes, branching pathways into dimensions hinted at on the alien map. At first the branches collapsed, unstable, tearing apart machines and men alike. But failure was only a lesson. Within months, humanity stabilized 2 new portals. What lay beyond those rifts was uncharted. Some whispered of oceans that floated upside down, skies filled with burning rivers, landscapes where time itself slowed. Others spoke of civilizations more ancient than the alien empire, lurking in silence. But the whispers did not stop the march. Humanity was no longer asking whether it could cross. It was asking how fast. Elias grew restless. He wandered the camps, the factories, the ruined cities of the aliens, and saw how swiftly human presence erased what had come before. Streets where alien chants had once echoed now blared human songs. Towers built with alien symmetry now bore scaffolding for human banners. It should have been victory, but it felt like desecration. He spoke to soldiers, engineers, civilians pulled across the veil to settle in newly conquered territories. They did not speak of survival anymore. They spoke of dominion, of destiny, of spreading until there was nowhere left to spread. He remembered the alien officer's words, better to cut rot before it grows. And he wondered if the aliens had looked once upon their own victories, their own expansion, and asked the same questions he now asked. The storm broke when scouts exploring the first stabilized branch returned in tatters. Half their number were dead. The survivors bore wounds that did not bleed but glowed, veins of light pulsing beneath their skin. They spoke in whispers, their voices carrying strange harmonies. We were not alone, one whispered before collapsing into silence forever. What they had seen was never fully recorded, but fragments of their words reached Elias, a city of crystal that stretched into infinity, beings of light that moved not as individuals but as one. A voice that spoke not in sound but in thought, echoing across every mind at once. The scouts had not been attacked. They had been warned. Elias confronted Sierra with the reports. "We cannot continue," he pleaded. "We are not ready. Every step forward risks awakening something far beyond us." Sierra's gaze did not waver. "Every step backward risks extinction. You think still like a scholar, Elias. But this is no longer a question of knowledge. This is survival. We cannot unmake what we have begun." Her voice carried no malice, only certainty, and that certainty terrified him more than alien weapons ever had. The second stabilized branch opened into a wasteland of broken stone and endless winds. At first, it seemed lifeless. Human soldiers marched across it with ease, planting beacons, erecting forward bases. But then the winds began to whisper. At first the voices were faint, like echoes at the edge of hearing. But soon they grew louder, distinct, repeating names of soldiers, secrets no one else could know. Men turned their weapons on shadows. Some tore off their helmets and walked into the storm, never to return. When the first battalion collapsed into madness, the expedition withdrew. Elias studied the reports with dread. The winds carried not sound but memory, fragments of thought pulled from those who walked among them. The wasteland itself seemed alive, feeding upon minds, unraveling them strand by strand. Still, plans were drawn to return. "It is hostile," Elias said to the generals gathered in the war council. "It is not a place to conquer. It is a place that devours." A general whose eyes were bloodshot with exhaustion replied flatly, Then we will teach it to starve. Whispers spread. Some soldiers refused to step through the portals. Civilians grew restless, wondering whether victory had turned to hubris. Protests rose in cities across Earth, voices demanding retreat or at least restraint. But those voices were drowned out by fear. For across the alien dimension, survivors spoke of new stirrings. The fallen empire was not fully dead. From caverns untouched by the siege, from oceans too deep to conquer, remnants gathered. Choristers sang again in the distance, their harmonies fractured but fierce. The war was not over, it was spreading. Elias returned to the chamber where he had first seen the map. The glyphs still glowed faintly, though much of the citadel lay in ruin. He traced the lines, the pathways between dimensions, the countless realms already darkened. He realized then what the aliens had done. They had not conquered other dimensions, they had erased them. Each darkened mark was not a victory, but an obliteration. They had destroyed entire realms to prevent corruption from spreading, and humanity had called them tyrants. Elias fell to his knees, the weight of it crushing his chest. Perhaps the aliens had been monsters, but perhaps they had been saviors in their own way, sacrificing everything to preserve what remained, and humanity had undone it all. The day came when Earth itself trembled. Sensors screamed of distortions rippling through the sky, lights bent, shadows twisted. For one terrible hour, the fabric of the world seemed to waver as though thin ice above a bottomless sea. And then it passed. But Elias knew it was only the beginning. Something beyond had noticed, something vast, patient, and waiting. He stood once more with Sira at the edge of the glowing ocean, the horizon pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. "Do you feel it?" he asked softly. Sira's face was calm, resolute. "I feel the future." Elias closed his eyes. "I feel the end." They stood together in silence as the waves pulsed with light, as if the ocean itself were breathing, waiting. And far beyond, across dimensions uncounted, something stirred. Humanity had torn open the veil, and now the universe would answer.